In this video essay, I am going to talk about whether I agree that the emotional responses to popular films are simply to do with the manipulation of the audience. The spectator is anyone who is watching the film, and the spectator theory tries to understand how we as individuals view a film and psychologically how a film can impact upon us. This is different to audience theory, as audience theory focuses on how we view films en masse rather than individuals. The purpose of the theory is to investigate what watching a film involves, such as watching a film not just being for the entertainment value, but there also being a psychological process going on. It is said that the mechanism of watching a film is a dreamlike process and involves the unconscious. By putting the theory into practice, the micro elements of film, such as the camera work and editing, bring us closer to certain situations than real life would, putting the spectator in an unthreatening position of power known as voyeurism. This is the basis of the theory, which involves looking at how the spectator is positioned, meaning their given point of view on the narrative. Voyeurism is a psychoanalytical study that the spectator watches a film with the idea of watching without being seen, in other words, spying on someone, which puts the voyeuristic spectator in a position of power, as they know they will never be seen by their characters on screen. Spectator theory also tries to understand how we become emotionally involved within films, bringing out different emotions including joy, sadness, anger, fear and disgust. Let me give you an example of how we are influenced emotionally by what we see on the screen. Here is a clip of a character smiling. I bet whilst watching it, it made you smile as well. This is because when we see a smile in a movie, we are more likely to want to smile ourselves. This works the same for something sad, as we emphasise with the characters. This is influenced by the fact the face filled up the whole of your visual field, so there's nowhere else to look. This works the same way when watching something with suspense that might scare us. Even though we know there is nothing up there on the screen that can touch us or hurt us, we still react as if they can. When we look at the spectator theory, it looks into how the film can psychologically impact upon us, and whether what we see and feel depends on our experiences, preferences and beliefs, therefore explaining how two people can walk out of watching the same movie with a different viewpoint. The way a film impacts us is dependent on ourselves, whether we are a social, cultural, private or desiring self. As a spectator, when watching a film, the way we view films can come under three different categories of reading: a preferred reading, a negotiated reading, and an oppositional reading. These three categories separate the different views in which us as a spectator watches a film. Here is what each reading means for a spectator of the film Split. A preferred reading is where spectators accept the response intended by the filmmaker, meaning going on the journey of the story. In the film Split, this would mean that you accept the point of view of the protagonist, showing that people with multiple personality disorders aren't harmful and have no control over what is happening to them. A negotiated reading is where you as a spectator only partially accept the response intended by the filmmaker, meaning you don't buy into the story fully for various reasons such as unrealistic representations. This is usually when you struggle to see the point of view of the protagonist, therefore meaning in Split you may agree that he has split personalities that are hard to control, but may argue at the fact they are uncontrollable. The final reading is an oppositional reading, where you as a spectator reject the intended response by not reacting in the intended manner, by not accepting the point of view of the protagonist. For example, in Split, this could mean you don't agree at all that split personalities are uncontrollable, and that they are just something made up. This could involve laughing or walking out of watching the film. In order to use the theory to carry out my task of whether I agree that the emotional responses to popular films are simply to do with the manipulation of the audience, I am going to use a scene from Shawshank Redemption to back up my viewpoint. This scene comes from just over halfway in the film, when one of the prison inmates called Brooks is released after serving his time of 50 years. In this scene, we see him leaving the prison and the life he lives until he decides that he doesn't like it and is tired of being afraid, so decides to end his life. As a spectator, we are in the point of view as if we are watching Brooks, but to also feel the loneliness he feels. As he leaves the prison, the use of movement by the prison guards as they turn away immediately makes Brooks seem lonely, as he is positioned in centre frame with the big prison gates behind him, showing no one around, manipulating us to feel sorry for him. In the next scene, his emotions are mirrored to us as he looks sad, making us feel sad and empathy, and the sense of loneliness is again highlighted with the additional characters in this scene facing away from him. Another way in which we are manipulated to feel sad is the use of the music. With it being slow and high key, it makes us feel heavy-hearted as we watch Brooks begin his life outside of the prison, with the addition of a voiceover from his character again influencing us as we hear the sadness in his slow and old voice to make us feel sorry for him.
Dear fellas, I can't believe how fast things move on the outside. I saw an automobile once when I was a kid, but now they're everywhere. The world went and got itself in a big damn hurry.
Again, the positioning of Brooks in his room in the halfway house reflects the loneliness we feel as he leaves the prison, with him standing centre frame in the middle of an empty room, almost as if he's being swallowed up. The tracking shot then tracks from all of the pigeons surrounding Brooks to Brooks' face of him looking empty and drained while sat on his own. This shot, in addition to the contrast of colours with the greens of the grass to the browns of his clothing, and the fact he is in an area not shaded by the trees, highlights the fact that he is on his own, sort of like a spotlight on him to make us feel his sense of loneliness. The final part to this scene is where we are really manipulated to feel emotion towards Brooks. The words he speaks are the most triggering part to make us feel upset when watching this. After following his journey, he decides it's time for it to come to an end.
I guess I'm too old for that sort of nonsense anymore. I don't like it here. I'm tired of being afraid all the time. I've decided not to stay. I doubt they'll kick up any fuss. Not for an old crook like me.
As we watch him carve his name into the wall, it manipulates us by really hitting us with what's coming. With addition to the music and the sound of the table dropping, our emotions are brought to the surface as we then recognise the same shot of loneliness as he is left hanging in the middle of the room, centre frame. The pace of this scene really helps us to emphasise the pain Brooks feels after leaving the prison. When watching this, I watched it as a preferred reader, as I completely understood the fact that after getting released from prison, Brooks didn't enjoy the life he was going to live and felt it was time for it to come to an end. I think I was one of the viewers who was more touched by this based on personal experiences, meaning when watching this I was a desiring